You ever think you know someone only to realize maybe you don't? This story starts out innocent enough, just a friendly visit between two families, but it ends with a discovery that left one woman completely questioning where the line between politeness and privacy really lies. Everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you love real-life stories full of mystery, emotion, and a touch of drama, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Alright, let's get into it. When Clara first heard that her husband's old colleague and his family were coming to stay for a few days, she was genuinely excited. It wasn't every day that their quiet countryside home was filled with laughter, chatter, and the chaos of guests. Her husband, Adam, had stayed close with his former co-worker, James, even after switching companies years ago. And although Clara had met James and his wife, Emily, a handful of times, she'd always found them warm, funny, and easy to get along with. So when Adam told her they'd be arriving Friday evening and staying until Tuesday, she didn't think twice. She cleaned the guest room, added some fresh flowers, and even put out a few thoughtful touches: soft towels, a scented candle, and a small welcome basket with snacks and toiletries. But perhaps her biggest mistake, she would later realize, was leaving her beloved perfume collection proudly displayed in a glass cabinet near the dresser. You see, Clara adored perfumes. She wasn't one of those people who just grabbed any bottle before heading out. No, for her, perfume was art. Memory, emotion. Each bottle told a story. One was a wedding gift, another a birthday present from her mother who'd passed years ago. Some were luxury brands she had saved up for. Others were unique, niche scents from her travels. 15 bottles in total, neatly arranged by color, label facing forward, each with its own small memory attached. When the guests arrived that Friday, everything felt perfect. Emily and James came with their two kids, bright, energetic little ones who instantly took to Clara's garden like it was their own playground. The adults chatted over coffee, the kids played tag, and the weekend flowed effortlessly. That first night, Clara noticed something small. As Emily hugged her goodnight, she caught a faint, sweet scent. It was familiar. Very familiar. But she brushed it off, thinking maybe Emily wore something similar. The next morning, as they were all sitting down to breakfast, Emily smelled even more radiant, floral, elegant, and strangely recognizable. Clara couldn't quite place it at first, but there was a flicker of déjà vu. Still, she didn't want to overthink it. Over the next few days, Clara and Emily grew closer. They cooked together, shared stories, and even had long talks late into the night after the kids were asleep. It was nice, really, until Tuesday morning, the day they were leaving. As they were all saying their goodbyes, Clara leaned in to hug Emily one last time. That same scent, but stronger this time, filled the air. She smiled and said playfully, "Emily, you smell incredible. What perfume is that?" And that's when Emily, without hesitation, said something that made Clara's smile freeze in place. "Oh, it's one of yours." Clara blinked. "One of mine?" Emily laughed casually, waving her hand as though it was nothing. "Yes, You have the most amazing collection in the guest room. I've been trying a different one every day. I hope you don't mind." There was a pause. The kind of silence that feels heavy, where your brain tries to process whether what you just heard was real or not. Clara laughed. Awkwardly. "Oh, of course, that's fine." But inside, she wasn't sure how to feel. After the guests left, Clara stood in the now empty guest room, staring at the glass cabinet. All the bottles looked untouched, perfectly lined up, shiny, innocent. But as she picked one up, she noticed the liquid level was just slightly lower than before. Another one too, and another. It wasn't drastic, just enough that someone who knew their perfumes could tell. That night, she couldn't shake the thought, was it really that big a deal? Or was she just being too sensitive? On one hand, it wasn't like Emily had stolen anything. She hadn't taken the bottles with her, she'd just sampled them. But on the other hand, these perfumes were deeply personal, private even. It wasn't about the cost, it was about permission. Would she ever walk into someone's home and use their things like that? Never. Not without asking. Still, she wondered, maybe she was overreacting. So that evening, she went on an online forum to get a second opinion. She titled her post, "Am I being unreasonable to think this is a bit rude?" She laid out the story, describing how lovely the visit had been, how friendly Emily was, but also how odd it felt to find out someone had been using her personal items without asking. Responses poured in within hours. Some people sided with her immediately. One comment read, "Honestly, I'd be furious. Using someone's perfume without asking is like borrowing their toothbrush. It's personal." Another said, "I wouldn't dream of touching another person's perfume collection. It's not about the cost, it's about respect." But then came the opposing camp. Others argued that since the collection was out in the open, in the guest room no less, maybe Emily thought they were there for the guests to enjoy. One user wrote, "If you don't want guests using your stuff, don't display it in their room. It's like leaving snacks on a table and saying, 'Oh, those weren't for you.'" Another added, "She probably thought they were testers or part of the room's charm." Honestly, it's an easy misunderstanding. Clara read through dozens of replies that night, her emotions swinging between validation and confusion. Was she too uptight? Was Emily really being disrespectful? Or was this just an innocent mistake blown out of proportion by internet strangers? But then a particular comment caught her eye. It read, "Imagine someone wearing your favorite perfume, the one tied to a memory of your mom or your wedding, without knowing its meaning." That's the thing about boundaries. They're invisible until someone crosses them. That one hit deep, because among her collection sat a small bottle, elegant, silver-capped, half full, that had belonged to her mother. The scent reminded her of hugs in the kitchen, of gentle laughter, of childhood safety. If Emily had used that one, Clara didn't even want to know. For days afterward, the incident lingered in her mind. It wasn't the end of the world and no harm done technically, but something about it stuck. She realized that it wasn't about perfume at all. It was about trust. When you invite someone into your home, you open your private space, your world, and there's an unspoken agreement. I trust you to treat it with care. And when that boundary gets blurred, even unintentionally, it leaves a small crack, a doubt. Weeks later, when Adam mentioned inviting James and Emily again next summer, Clara hesitated. She didn't want to seem cold or petty, but a part of her tightened. She smiled politely and said, "Maybe we'll see them somewhere else next time. A weekend trip, perhaps?" Adam nodded, not questioning it. But Clara knew some things once felt can't be unfelt. She never mentioned the perfume again, but the next morning she quietly moved her collection into her own dressing room, locked safely behind glass where only she could reach. And every now and then, when she sprayed one of her favorite scents, she couldn't help but think of that moment, that strange mix of surprise, disbelief, and silent disappointment. Because sometimes the smallest acts tell the biggest truths about how people see boundaries. It's not always about what someone takes. It's about what they assume they have a right to. Respect in relationships, even small, friendly ones, comes down to the simplest courtesy. Always ask before touching what isn't yours. And maybe, just maybe, that's what separates thoughtless habits from genuine respect. If you found this story thought-provoking, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow and lets me bring you more real-life stories like this one. Months passed since that visit, but the strange, uneasy feeling never really left Clara. Life went on, of course. Work, kids, routines. But every now and then, something as simple as catching the faint smell of one of her perfumes would send her back to that moment in the guest room. She'd picture Emily's cheerful face, that effortless laugh, and those casual words, "I've been trying a different one every day." It wasn't what Emily said that bothered her most. It was how she said it, like borrowing something intimate didn't even register as unusual. Clara had convinced herself to let it go, until one afternoon, about 6 months later, Adam came home with a familiar spark in his eyes. "Guess who I ran into today?" he said, dropping his bag by the door. Before Clara could answer, he continued, "James, he's in town for a conference. He and Emily invited us to dinner this weekend, said they'd love to catch up." Clara's smile froze for half a second. "Oh, that's nice," she managed. Adam didn't notice her hesitation. "It'll be fun. They've just moved into a new place too. We'll get to see their home this time." Clara nodded slowly, her thoughts spinning. Part of her wanted to say no, to find an excuse. But another part, the quieter, braver part, whispered, maybe it's time to move on. So she agreed. Saturday evening came quickly. The house was lovely, modern, cozy, full of personality. Emily greeted them at the door, as bubbly and warm as ever. "Clara, you look amazing. Come in, come in." Everything seemed so normal that for a moment, Clara wondered if she'd imagined the whole perfume thing. Maybe Emily truly hadn't meant any harm. They had dinner, roasted vegetables, wine, laughter echoing around the table. The kids ran upstairs to play, while the adults reminisced about old office stories. Then, during dessert, Emily stood up. "Clara, I have to show you something. Come with me." Curious, Clara followed her into the hallway. Emily led her into what looked like a small vanity room, a charming little corner filled with mirrors, flowers, and dozens of perfume bottles arranged neatly on glass shelves. Clara's heart skipped a beat. Emily beamed proudly. "You inspired me. After staying at your place, I started collecting perfumes too. I never realized how beautiful they are." She picked up a crystal bottle and smiled. "This one's my favorite. It's the same brand as that pink one you had in your guest room." Clara felt her chest tighten slightly. She managed a polite smile. "Oh, really? That's lovely." Emily laughed softly, unaware of the quiet storm building inside her guest. "I hope you don't mind. I even got the same cabinet design as yours. I just loved how you displayed everything." Clara nodded, forcing a chuckle. "No, not at all. It looks beautiful." But inside, she felt something twist. It wasn't anger exactly, more like a strange sadness. It was as if something that used to be personal, hers, had been copied, borrowed, replicated without understanding the meaning behind it. When she got home that night, Clara couldn't stop thinking about it. She told herself she was overreacting again. But deep down, she felt it, that same invisible boundary being crossed once more. Weeks later, she received a message from Emily. It was friendly at first, small talk about family, weekend plans. But then came the sentence that made Clara's heart sink. "By the way, I've been telling everyone about your perfume collection. You should totally start a blog or something. People love that aesthetic. You could even sell samples like I'm planning to." Sell samples? Clara stared at her phone. She reread the message 3 times, unable to decide if she should laugh or feel sick. Was Emily seriously trying to turn something so personal into a business idea? Inspired by her? She typed and erased half a dozen replies before deciding to say nothing. Days went by, then weeks, until one morning, while scrolling through social media, Clara saw a post that made her stomach drop. It was Emily, and smiling in a video, her vanity gleaming behind her. The caption read, "Welcome to my perfume journey. Inspired by a friend who taught me to fall in love with scent." Clara clicked play. Emily was explaining each perfume, describing how certain fragrances made her feel. And then, near the end, she picked up a small, silver-capped bottle, identical to the one that had belonged to Clara's mother. "This one," Emily said softly, "is a classic. It reminds me of warmth and kindness. The kind of scent that feels like home." Clara's breath caught. She knew that bottle. It wasn't just similar, it was the exact same brand and edition her mother's had been. It wasn't expensive or rare, but it carried a weight of memory that couldn't be replaced. Clara sat in silence for a long time after that. Not angry, not even hurt exactly, just drained. It was strange, she thought, how someone could take inspiration so far that it blurred into imitation. That evening, Adam noticed her quietness. "You okay?" he asked gently. She hesitated, then showed him the video. He watched silently, then looked at her with confusion. Wow. Do you think she realizes what she's doing?" "I don't think so," Clara said softly, "and that's what makes it worse." For days, Clara debated whether to message Emily, to tell her that some things are sacred, that not every admiration needs to become imitation. But in the end, she didn't. Instead, she quietly started doing something else. She began writing down her memories, not just about perfumes, but about what each scent meant to her. The gardenia one from her wedding, the vanilla scent she wore when she got her first job, the lilac her mum used to love. She filled page after page with feelings, memories, stories. It became her private ritual, a way to reclaim what had been unintentionally taken, and months later, when she least expected it, those writings would become something more, a turning point that even Emily couldn't have seen coming. Because life, as Clara was about to discover, has a strange way of giving back the things you thought you'd lost. It had been nearly a year since that first visit. A year since the perfume incident that Clara still couldn't completely forget. But something had changed in her. Instead of bottling her feelings up, she'd poured them into her writing. Every night, after the world went quiet, she'd sit by the window with a cup of tea and her leather-bound journal. Inside, she wrote about scents, yes, but also about memories, people, emotions, and boundaries. How a single drop of perfume could awaken a forgotten day. How kindness could sometimes blur into carelessness. And how even the smallest acts could leave invisible fingerprints on our hearts. It became her therapy. Until one afternoon, when something unexpected happened, Clara's younger sister, Mia, came over for coffee. She spotted the journal on the table and, curious, began flipping through a few pages. "Clara, this is beautiful," she said softly. "You have no idea how powerful your writing is." Clara laughed shyly. "It's just my thoughts. Nothing special." Mia shook her head. "No, really. You should share this. People would feel this." Clara smiled politely but shook her head. "It's too personal. It's not meant for the world." Mia didn't push, but a few weeks later, Clara got a message from her. "Hey, don't be mad. I showed one of your entries to a friend who runs a small blog. She loved it and wants to publish it anonymously. Just one piece, please." At first, Clara was horrified. Her private thoughts, out there, for strangers to read. But Mia promised it would be anonymous, under a simple pen name, The Scent Keeper. After some hesitation, Clara agreed. And that decision would change everything. Within days, the post went viral. People from all over the world began sharing it, commenting about how deeply they related to the story. The title read, "The Perfume Borrower, when a guest teaches you about boundaries." Readers poured out their own experiences, friends crossing lines, unspoken discomforts, lessons learned too late. It wasn't about anger, it was about self-respect. Clara was stunned. She'd written those words in silence, never imagining they'd touch so many hearts. But the internet, as it often does, had a way of finding connections. And one of those connections turned out to be Emily. 3 days later, Clara's phone buzzed with a message. It was short, simple, yet enough to make her chest tighten. "I read your article. Was that about me?" For a long time, Clara didn't respond. She stared at the screen, feeling the weight of every possible reply. Then another message came. If it was, "I'm so sorry." Clara's throat went dry, and she typed, erased, and typed again before finally sending, It wasn't about blame, it was about understanding. A few minutes later, Emily replied, "Can we talk? I think I owe you more than an apology." They met the next afternoon at a quiet cafe near the river. Clara arrived early, her hands trembling slightly as she stirred her tea. When Emily walked in, she looked different, quieter, humbled, almost nervous. "Clara," she began softly, sitting down. "I had no idea how much that meant to you. I thought I was being playful, curious. I didn't realize." Her voice broke a little. "I guess I never stopped to think about what those things meant to you." Clara nodded slowly. "It's okay, you didn't mean harm. But it made me see how easily we assume what's okay for others." Emily sighed deeply, her eyes glistening. "I saw the perfume collection as something beautiful, not as something sacred. And when I copied it, I thought I was honoring you. But now I see. I took what was special and made it ordinary." The two women sat in silence for a long while, the clinking of cups filling the quiet. Then Clara smiled gently. "You know what's strange? If it hadn't happened, I'd never have written those stories. I'd never have realized how much meaning scent carries, or how it connects us to memory." Emily nodded, a faint smile on her lips. "Maybe we both learned something then." They talked for hours that day, not just about perfume, but about boundaries, friendship, and forgiveness. By the time they said goodbye, something unspoken had lifted between them. Not everything could go back to how it was, but there was peace. The kind that comes after understanding, not confrontation. Months later, Clara decided to continue writing. The Scent Keeper became more than just an anonymous blog. It turned into a community. People shared stories about love, loss, forgiveness, and the strange ways small moments could change a person. And one day, while scrolling through her inbox, Clara noticed a message from a familiar name. It was Emily again. She had attached a photo, her vanity shelf, the same one Clara had seen before, but this time it looked different. Fewer bottles, simpler. One stood in the center, a soft lavender perfume with a note beside it. The note read, "To Clara, thank you for teaching me that beauty isn't in what we collect, but in what we understand." Clara smiled as she read it. She placed her phone down, walked to her own collection, and chose a bottle she hadn't used in months, her mother's. As she sprayed it into the air, the familiar scent wrapped around her like a memory reborn. This time, it didn't feel painful. It felt complete. Because sometimes, forgiveness isn't about forgetting what happened. It's about realizing that even the smallest trespass can carry a lesson worth remembering. And maybe, just maybe, that's how healing really begins. So if you've ever felt like someone crossed a line in your life, take a breath, step back, and remember, boundaries aren't walls. They're bridges built with respect, and sometimes the people who cross them aren't villains. They're just unaware of the path they've taken. Forgiveness doesn't erase the past. It transforms it. If this story touched your heart, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps bring more true life tales about human emotion, empathy, and the invisible threads that connect us all. It had been almost 2 years since that first visit. The perfume, the misunderstanding, the quiet hurt that had once sat heavy on Clara's heart. Now, her life felt different, lighter. Her blog, The Scent Keeper, had grown beyond anything she ever imagined. Thousands of people read her words every week. Strangers from across the world shared how her stories helped them find peace, closure, or courage to set boundaries of their own. It was humbling. But one evening, while replying to a reader's message, Clara received an email that made her heart race. The subject line read, "Publishing Proposal from Marlowe House Press." Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside, a kind editor named Grace explained how deeply her writing had touched her, how the quiet, poetic reflection in Clara's words carried the same emotional truth as best-selling memoirs. She wanted to turn The Scent Keeper into a book. At first, Clara couldn't believe it. She reread the email 3 times, afraid she'd misunderstood. Then she laughed softly, tears in her eyes. This little journal, once a place to pour out silent pain, was about to become something beautiful, something real. For the next 6 months, Clara worked tirelessly. She spent late nights revisiting old pages, rewriting passages, adding stories she'd never shared publicly, the childhood memories, the scent of her mother's scarf, the way forgiveness can change its own fragrance over time. Some chapters made her cry, others made her laugh through the tears. And then came the hardest part, writing the final chapter. She titled it, "The Guest Who Borrowed Light." In it, she wrote about Emily, not as a villain, not as a friend lost, but as a mirror that showed her something she'd never seen in herself. Sometimes, Clara wrote, the people who cross our boundaries aren't trying to take from us. They're searching for warmth, unaware they're standing too close to the flame. And when we forgive, we don't extinguish the fire, we teach it to burn kindly. When she typed the final word, Clara sat back in silence, watching the cursor blink. Then she closed her laptop and whispered, "Thank you." Not to anyone in particular, but to life itself. Months later, The Scent Keeper, stories of fragrance and forgiveness, hit the shelves. To her surprise, it quickly became a quiet sensation. Bookstores featured it in their windows. Readers left heartfelt reviews online. Some even wrote letters saying it helped them reconnect with family or make peace with people they'd once resented. Clara was overwhelmed by the response. But one letter, sent by hand in an ivory envelope, touched her the most. It was from Emily. Inside was a simple note. "I finished your book last night. I cried through the last chapter. You turned what could have been resentment into beauty, and I'll never forget that. Thank you for forgiving me before I even knew I needed forgiveness." And attached to the letter was a small box. Inside it was a perfume bottle, crystal clear, unmarked, simple. A note inside read, "A fragrance with no name, for a friendship reborn." Clara smiled, holding it close to her heart. That night, she placed the nameless bottle in the center of her cabinet, not as part of her collection, but as a reminder, because sometimes the most precious scents in life aren't the ones we buy or display. They're the ones that carry forgiveness, compassion, and the courage to start again. A few months later, Clara was invited to speak at a book event in London. Standing on stage before a crowd of readers, she felt the same nervous flutter she'd felt the day Emily had first used her perfume, but this time it was different. She began, "I once thought someone had taken something from me, but now I know she gave me something instead, a lesson in empathy." The audience listened, quiet, emotional. She continued, "If someone crosses your line, don't rush to anger. Ask yourself what their heart might not understand yet. And when you set that boundary with kindness, you don't just protect yourself, you teach love how to speak more clearly." The room erupted in applause. As she stepped off stage, she spotted a familiar face in the crowd, Emily. They met eyes across the room. No words, just a quiet smile, the kind that says, "We made it through." Later that night, as Clara walked through the streets of London, a soft drizzle misted the air. She passed a perfume boutique, and from inside, a faint melody played, an old song she used to listen to with her mother. For a moment, she stood still, watching the reflections of lights dance on the wet pavement. And she realized something profound. Everything in life, the joy, the pain, the misunderstandings, they all leave behind a scent. Some fade fast, others linger for years. But the most powerful ones are the fragrances of lessons learned and hearts mended. So if you're listening to this right now, wondering whether to forgive someone or whether it's worth setting a boundary, remember this: boundaries protect your peace. Forgiveness restores your freedom. And sometimes, the same moment that once hurt you most becomes the fragrance that reminds you how far you've come. Thank you so much for watching this story. If it touched your heart, don't forget to like this video. Share it with someone who might need a little hope today. And subscribe to the channel for more real-life stories about empathy, healing, and the quiet strength we all carry inside.